Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, Change the Conversation. An unedited, honest conversation to create the future. I'm Arjan Visser, Futurist and your host. Join me as I chat with my friend Mark Billage on self-leadership, future and peers. Mark is a published author of the book ICU and an ICF certified international coach who creates fearless teams, one leader at a time. Mark, welcome in the podcast.
Hi, Aaron. Good to be with you. Yeah, all the way from England.
All the way from England. Yeah, so we are international. It took a long time to map our agendas to this date. So I'm really happy to have you in the podcast.
Thank you.
So I just have this weird story, or call it weird, call it a coincidence over the last couple of days. So I'll tell you. Last Friday, I got a message just before I switched off my phone from a Dutch guy with exactly the same name as I have. Never met. We were connected because a way back, a client of his thanked him but tagged me.
Oh,
So he said, "Can we talk?" So yesterday we talked, and he said, I'm interested in your book,
mm.
and I would love to give that to my inner circle, my staff. But before that, it was like funny, I had a conversation through LinkedIn with myself, made an appointment with myself, and now someone is giving my book with the same name, but he is not the author to his inner circle. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is, and he enjoyed it as well. Like he even joked, like, I hope no one from the office looks in my agenda, seeing me having a conversation with myself.
That's right.
That will prevent funny questions. So,
Yeah.
but
That's
that
certain
was
options.
funny. So, someone with my name is giving my book as a Christmas present to his staff.
Yeah. That's,
So,
you couldn't write that script.
yeah, I thought that was just funny. I wanted to share that.
Yeah. That's a good story.
Yeah. So, what did we talk about today?
Yeah. Well, I've not quite completed your book. Really interesting. And I like it because it's short and to the point. But yeah, one of the questions I had when I was reading it was, obviously you talk about identity and strategic planning, vision, that kind of thing, which is great. But I was just kind of thinking confidence is often a problem for leaders.
Yeah.
And, what would you say are the key things or key thing for a leader to be confident in moving, like you say, into their sphere of influence?
Yeah.
And doing that effectively, really?
It's a good question. So many circles spinning in my head right now. So it's definitely a good question. I think that confidence can depend on many things. But I would say the key, or at least where I have authority and I talk about, is that finding out who you are and who
Right.
you are becoming. Because that is, although it feels really, well, you need a lot of courage to start finding out, but that's actually the only solid ground you have. That is depending on who you are. I start the book with we're talking about it's leadership from the inside out, and it's not only about the mastery of skills. Like authority, authenticity has nothing to do with skills, not even with character. They're all exposure of who you are. So I think the big question is, who are you? That's even like when people watch this the podcast right now. If they've never heard of us, the first question that needs to be answered: who are they? And on top of that, we could talk about trust, authenticity, authority. But if the question is unanswered, who are you? So I think for a leader, to not get my people stuck in my blind spot,
Yeah.
I need to reduce it, positive or negative. So I need to find out who I am and how that overflows.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, certainly in what I'm doing with people, I talk about knowing yourself to lead yourself. And that makes a lot of sense. Where do you think, obviously talking about confidence, yeah, you could say that you know who you are, you possibly are working out where, who you aspire to be, as you say in the book, but you could still have a problem with confidence. So I was wondering if as you drill down there, what's the underlying factor, even if it's from the inside out, that causes people to lack confidence?
Well, besides identity, it's also your future perspective. So I talk in the first 2 chapters, future identity, future perspective, which is not, well, in the book you have to make it sequential, but in the application of it, after you have your future perspective, you want to update your identity.
Right. Yeah.
And that in itself could just keep on spinning those 2. So knowing who you are and knowing what your future perspective is a start. But with knowing, I mean not head knowledge.
No.
I mean it is a connection between what you sense, what you believe, what you have faith for, what you prepare for, and then and then of course it needs to manifest. Concepts that don't manifest in innovation, we say that then they were great ideas. But it is, so you can't say take one out, leave one out.
Yeah.
Your confidence, if it never manifests, you can build up so much confidence, but you fail yourself at the end.
Yeah.
If you don't believe the horizon, the aspired identity yourself, then you will never start pursuing it, preparing for it, and it will never manifest.
Yeah.
So I think it's not a paradox, but I think it's a dynamic between all those elements.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a kind of flow there. Okay. So in terms of what do you think it is that prevents leaders from, doing that inward journey, in terms of knowing who they are?
The quick answer is guts.
Do
you have the guts to go deeper?
Yeah.
Because knowing better what circumstances are and what needs to happen, having judgment or even rebellion, is all, if you take theory that's all on this end. Well, you need the confidence to get to the other end. So it's all about, do I have the guts to let go what I know, turn away from what I know? In one word, let go my how to find out my who, to get to the other side, my where to, which is actually the real word for why. Not getting stuck in a rationale, but the why is your the mission you want to achieve. It's the reason of existence, purpose.
Yeah, that sounds good. What as you do that process, obviously, as people think about that and taking courage to actually do that inward journey, what would you say? Sometimes when I was when I've led teams, one of the issues for me has always been, is it worth the pain to get to where we want to be? What's the pain? I can rationalize the pain. I can deal with the pain as long as I know that where I'm going is a worthwhile destination or place to be, at least for a time. So what would you say is the kind of that, looking at the other side, if you like, and saying, okay, this is where you're headed, this is why it's worth making that journey?
Well, we talked about fear you, but if you take a bell curve
Mm-hmm.
of the forerunners, the early adopters, the
Yeah.
followers, and those who are late, you know, depending on where you are on that bell curve by your character, um, um, the answer would be different, I think,
Okay. Yeah.
because just as a forerunner, if I'm triggered by the benefits or an incentive, we tend to say easy, like vision gives pain a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But if my vision is the fruit that will go out, grow from it, the outcome, the benefits, then we are very close to what we tend to do in corporate life. We trick people into certain behavior and achievement with an incentive.
Mm.
That's a burnout strategy for most people
Yeah.
because it's really addictive
Sure.
to win the sailing trip to the Caribbean. Been there once through an incentive, it's magic, but it's really addictive.
Mm.
So you could forget who you are
Mm.
to get on board of the next trip again.
Yeah.
So we tend to say, I don't want to be tolerated, I want to be celebrated. Well, celebration
Mm-hmm.
is addictive,
Yeah.
gets you into burnout. So I always say, no, I want to be seen and heard, feeling seen and feeling heard. So
Yeah.
it's a relational connection, but that's not enough for me to be motivated. I have to see it myself.
Mm.
Not a description of seeing what's on the horizon, but be on the top of the mountain and seeing it for myself.
Sure.
So, but that's me. I know there are many other people who don't need that. They just need clarity
Yeah.
to follow, somewhere else on the bell curve. And I think it's a good thing that forerunners is a very small group and the followers is a big group, because else it would be, well, crowded on the summit. But
Yeah.
but what do you think yourself? What would be, how would you endure the pain and not be hurt by it?
Well, I think it comes down to your motivation. What's your heart motivation for being a leader? Um, I think for me, it's always been about how do I help others become all they can be. So it's for the highest good of other people, realizing that some of the things I do naturally, I suppose you want to say, or by default, can actually damage people.
Yeah.
And if I'm not aware of that, I can think, like Jung said, I can just think it's fate. I think, oh, that's just the way it is. But actually, there's some things I can do that will make my unconscious conscious, and as I do that, I can make it visible, and making it visible means I can change it.
Yeah.
So I can't change what I can't see. So I think for me, it's always been about, if I change the environment around me, to your point about everybody being seen and heard, that then I can create an environment that makes that happen. But if I don't realize what my blind spots are, and I need to ask other people to find that out. So that's a courageous or a vulnerable act in itself. And you obviously need that trust relationship to be able to do that. But I think having the courage to do that and say, I know there's some things I do which actually just undermine my leadership completely and mean that we don't get where we want to be. So what are they? And I suppose, so for me, the reward is seeing others making the contribution they should be, bringing that richness into the conversation. I know that decisions will be better because I've got other perspectives that perhaps I was unconsciously suppressing just because that's my natural tendency. So becoming aware of that means that I can change my behavior.
That's a really rich answer you give, because I think it's interesting to unpack that one. because at the beginning you said like you could commit to, not the words that you used, but came to my mind. You described the dark side of
Mm,
the greater good. You know, people tend to commit to the greater good, sacrifice to the greater good at the expense of themselves.
sure.
And actually, that happens a lot. So the greater
Mm,
good is a good thing when it's in sports competition,
mm,
if it is in a war setting, military. But in the average setting of life, it demands an unhealthy self-sacrifice,
yeah.
which undermines who you are, your growth in who you are.
Mm,
And we started our podcast with that. That is actually that's the key to have effect on others. So
yeah.
you stay behind in your personal development, which will overflow in something that's not up to it to others, and they got hurt. So that there's a huge tension in that one, because that means that the commitment, you mentioned the contribution that people give, that gets
Mm,
you really excited.
mm,
That goes beyond commitment.
right.
I would say the opposite of commitment is ownership,
Hmm.
which means you see the perspective and it motivates you from the inside out. And your contribution is an accelerator for you to grow, versus just commitment, which is buckle up and suck up and maybe even cover up,
Yeah.
and and you leave yourself behind. So you
Mm,
end up, your leadership becomes segmented over parts of you that are not growing with you.
yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I think that's a danger, and I think part of that is because of the way we think about things. We think about things in a even unconsciously as an either or, but I think it's both and. I think it comes down to the axiom for me that you can't give away what you don't possess. And if you so some people say to me, leadership, so we're selfish to keep concentrating on myself. I said, well, look at it another way. If you don't if you're not energized, if you're not mentally fit, or however you want to say it, then you're not going to lead as well as you could do. And I think it's both and. I think it's leading so that you're leading out of what you have discovered and explored and seen yourself, to the point that you think, oh, I love this so much, or I enjoy it so much, or I am growing so much, I want others to do the same. And I think it's true. I think you can sacrifice yourself and say, oh, well, I'll suppress myself so that others can grow. But actually, I think it's more of a both and. Let's grow together, instead.
Yeah, because making it possible for others to grow at the expense of you growing, that's a contradiction with leadership, because you're
Absolutely.
not modeling growing. So you ask them to do something that is not, they're
Yeah.
not inspired to do.
Yeah.
So, and then the result of that misbalance will be that you have to fight yourself not to start control them, because you feel threatened because they are bypassing you.
Absolutely.
And the only reason they do that because you didn't grow. So it's a false humility, and we call it selfish. But one of my peers mentioned that the most selfish thing you can do as a leader is not invest in your self leadership,
Absolutely.
because then you multiply and inspire something that's not authentically you. So you're no longer the right person in that place.
Yeah.
And you will compensate that with your blind spot and the dark side of your character, which is a great opportunity to deal with yourself. But
Yeah.
again, that only can happen when you do self leadership development.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
And
I think it's really important. You lead out of the overflow of who you are, and if you've got no overflow, or you're threatened by what's going on around you, you're always going to be protecting yourself. and therefore you can't lead without fear. So,
Yeah, you can't. And but you need confidence.
absolutely.
So you need confidence and courage to find out who you are, and you need confidence and courage to actually take that as the decision making framework. Do I put my effort in this? Does it, is it in line with who I am, where I'm going? And that's a bit how I finished the book on the macro scale with your personal discoveries. You need that knowing, but I don't mean knowledge, understanding, like we said before. It's a deeper sense of knowing. It's a holistic sense of knowing, because many things have not manifested, and our brain only knows what it has seen before, and our ego triggers that to repeat. So fighting the ego, fighting the brain, we need to have some substance, to focus on and make the decisions based on. But that also gives you the huge task. That's why I said I love that when you said it's a thin book. I had feedback from people who said, if I read a bit fast, I can finish it in an hour. Maybe I can do the exercises in a couple of days. Somewhere deep inside, I feel this is maybe more than a year's work. So wherever you are, just go from cover to cover, and it's an iterative process. But the end of the journey is that your personal discoveries, they give you an input to realign if you own a business or lead a department, to realign the strategies, because your work life your work life should not exist. It is about life, and a major part of it you spend working with others, maybe in employment, maybe as an owner. But that time is best spent if it has a shared result that's good for the organization. But it's your development time as well, because the business needs your contribution, but you can't contribute when it's not authentically connected to where you're going. So the alignment between you, who you are, and the strategy and the direction of the business, they need to be mapped in a way.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think every leader has a life message, and working out whether what that message is, or purpose, or calling, however you want to put it, but working out whether you're aligned to it, because that's your passion. That's the oxygen in your leadership. And if you decide to sacrifice that for, I don't know, financial gain or whatever it is, and I get that sometimes there's that deception that goes on, but if you do that, then you're going to end up being burnt out, because you're under great stress, because you're doing something that's not in line with who you are. So
and we tend to forget that. It's a lot of potential client discussions, because most of the times they never become a client, because they keep hold in, this is my work where I earn my income, and this is my mission where I deliver my value. That's a squeeze, because your authority is based on the value you deliver. The authenticity is based on knowing who you are and being able to actually, I would nearly say execute that, but maybe a better word is to express that through your creative thoughts. So, but the lowest level of reward is a financial compensation. So if those things don't come together, and I know that I go streak through the hairs. Is that the expression in English?
Sorry, what was that?
No, it's not. Maybe I touched some holy cows in that one. But if you are not bringing them together,
Right.
then authenticity and authority is not in your ministry,
No,
not
agree.
in your mission, you know.
Yeah.
So it is, you can't give your best somewhere else where you expect your financial reward to pay the bills. That is such a weird twist that needs courage
Yeah.
and needs confidence. But there is a moment, and I'm not saying like everyone start their own business. I'm not saying that at all.
No, no.
I'm just saying like you have one heart, you have one set of heartbeats, you have one mission, you have one identity, you have one future perspective.
Yeah.
So try not to make that work in
Yeah.
separated worlds.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think your confidence is not when you disconnect from your passion.
Yeah.
And you don't lead out of your passion. And we all know, don't we? People don't leave jobs, they leave people.
Yeah.
They leave the toxic environment, they leave the whatever it is. If it's too much stress, it's not usually the financial compensation that's the issue.
No.
So I think it's being authentic to yourself means you have a different journey. And it's an adventure, and sometimes it's like going up crazy, and other times it's like you feel like you're falling over the edge of a roller coaster. But if you've got certainty about who you are and where you're going, then you can rely on those things, and because they come out of your heart. And so I totally see where you're going with that. Yeah, very good.
Yeah. So I love that example of a roller coaster, because it is a roller coaster. It's like with everything that's not predictable, which is everything that's ahead and still needs to manifest. It's the learning, which is falling and standing up. It is the experimentation, knowing what doesn't work. And we all know the theory.
Yeah.
But again, to hold on and keep going and, keep enjoying the roller coaster, even when it was just a little bit too much, comes back to that key question.
Absolutely.
Who am I aspiring to become?
Yeah.
So, Mark, I thank you for this call, and everyone who have been listening and finished it, the podcast, the replay, or even the live podcast recording. There is a trigger in a lot of things we said, and if you feel triggered, it's not positive or negative, but if you feel triggered, then actually the best thing you can do is connect an action to it. And the easiest action you can connect to it is just connect with Mark, connect with me. You can direct message us or use the link that's visible in the screen, like businessrevivalist.com/connect. Because actually, that's not about us. That's not about working together. That can all flow from it, but it's the self-accountability, which is maybe one of the hardest things to start around self-leadership. So you receive the trigger. It's your accountability to put an action to it. So let's just connect.
Yeah.
For those who are interested in the book, there's also another link, businessrevivalist.com/book, and you get a digital version of it for your own price, or find the link for a physical copy. So, Mark, thanks again.
Thank you, Arjan. It's been great.
Looking forward for how the story unfolds.
Yeah, amen to that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.